Marshall in the middle.
We're here with Jeff Fenlason and Joe Benson, and I'm Will Marshall, and we're going to look at Lessons for Leaders presented by formerforce.com. Joe and I met Jeff here as part of what we've been doing, and it was just amazing the things that I realized that were already in his kit bag, right, Joe? We talked about it when I met Jeff, and the background and the places he'd been and the look.
Some of the experiences, we may have not have been there, but we've seen a lot of different things throughout our careers as well. So we all kind of clicked, right?
Yeah. So I thought it was a neat thing. And then so as I interviewed Jeff for the Heroes I Know, and we came back and we told the story of Black Hearts, we decided and thought that, hey, let's explore these old thoughts that you had, because you had just such a huge treasure chest of stories and blog posts and things. So we've dug down deep for Lessons for Leaders, and we found some of Jeff Finlayson's old thoughts, Finn's thoughts from his website, and we're welcoming Jeff tonight. We're going to try to attempt our maybe our first episode, or maybe our pilot, or try to figure it out, and welcome everybody that might be listening. And we're really appreciative. And so I've shared my screen here. This is Finn's thoughts. Jeff, take a minute, if you don't mind, and introduce yourself. And then let's look at this one blog post as a framework for maybe what we might have coming up next. Sound good?
Sure. I appreciate it. Thanks, Will. Thanks, Joe. Pleasure to be on with you and to share this experience. So my name's Jeff Fenlason, and I had a pretty standard 28-year Army career for the most part. I retired in 2018. And I was an infantryman by trade, but that's not really where the most of my career took place. I retired as a master sergeant, for what that's worth. But what really happens and what started this conversation was I had a pretty standard infantryman's career, pretty successful. I went to Ranger School. I graduated Ranger School. I was inducted in the Audie Murphy Club. I was a drill sergeant. I was a squad leader. I did a lot of those jobs, and pretty successful at all of them. And I was headed down the road where I could see what my future looked like. And then I deployed to Iraq in 2005 in OIF 3 or OIF 0507, depending on how you look at it. And the platoon I eventually took over ended up committing a war crime. Obviously, probably the worst war crime of this 20-year period that we know about. It's chronicled quite well in a book called Black Hearts, One Platoon's Descent into Madness in Iraq's Triangle of Death, by a guy named Jim Frederick. And it tells the story of 1st of the 502nd, specifically 1st Platoon Bravo Company, 1st of the 502nd, during that year period. Coming back from that deployment, what happened is essentially I went from hero to zero. I had all of on one hand, I had gone into that series as a well-respected non-commissioned officer. I had all the bells and whistles that you wanted infantry platoon sergeant to have. I had held a series of jobs of increasing responsibility. I was acting as a brigade ops sergeant major for about 9 months as a junior sergeant first class, to kind of give you the idea of what people thought of me at the time. And then coming out of Iraq, all of that disappeared. And essentially you start to get the message of, you stink as a leader. You're horrible. And that sent me into a little bit of a tailspin, honestly. Not that I ever had a ton of friends in the Army or that, but I had people I think who respected me, but suddenly they said, you suck. And so one day I sat down and I started writing because there were a lot of things about this Army leadership model that I really struggled with. And so I started writing Fen's thoughts in probably 2009, maybe the summer, early fall of 2009. Now, I need to say that a lot of the links that are in the blog won't work anymore. They might not. So don't get wrapped up in particularly being able to click on this or that. And you also have to put it in perspective of the Army of that time. So there's a lot of quotations that maybe from General Dempsey, General Retired Martin Dempsey, or others that are in there, and people who are no longer serving. So while the specific incidences may be outdated a little bit, and I think that's worth saying and worth remembering as we have the discussion, the thoughts or the themes of the blog itself, I believe, are enduring and lead to important questions. And so the one that's up there now is blog post number 34, and it struck me today because it's called Just One. And if you start, I am only one, but I am one. I cannot do everything, but I can do something. And what I can do, I should do, and with the grace of God, I will do. And then right below that, do all the good you can in all the ways you can in all the places you can at all the times you can to all the people you can as long as you can. And so I see this discussion as me doing what I can where I can. And I'm only one guy. The three of us are only three guys. But we are trying, we all in our own way want to make a difference. And you're going to get to we'll come to a part later on where I say you have to give a damn. So the idea is, okay, I'm only one. You don't have to care about my lessons or my stories or my inputs, but I believe they have value to the broader conversation. And so I think we owe it to those who have an interest in leader development and those who have an interest in leadership and those who find themselves in challenging leadership positions to offer them whatever wisdom we may have gained. And hopefully it's in a broad enough perspective that they can apply it to whatever their lives or their situations or their particular events are in their lives right now. So that's where I started. I wrote it for 2.5 years. I was pretty consistent about it. And I was fortunate that the blog got noticed by the old Battle Command Knowledge System, which was one of the early sort of ideas of the intranet. And they wanted to import the blog itself. And what we decided in the end was that I would pick and choose which blog posts I wanted to put into the BCKS. And I was the only non-commissioned officer to have his own reading folder in the Army's professional development library. So that opened some doors and got me some notice. And I was published in Military Review with a dear friend of mine, Joe Doty, a couple of times. But the blog has, while I haven't necessarily kept up with it, it has aged well. And I think we find ourselves at a time when talking about what leadership is and what it isn't, and how the Army may or may not really capture the essence of it well. And I would argue a lot of organizations. So I think this is a discussion I look forward to having, and I really wanted it to be collaborative. Yes, I kind of know what the blogs say, but I'll read them again fresh after a decade, and you guys will read them for the first time. And I think they offer, and what we're hoping to do is we'll post the link through the former force and through Will. You can push it out to your audience, and then people can read ahead and sort of have a feel for what we want to talk about, and then hopefully be able to join the conversation down the road. So that's where I stand. That's kind of what got all this started, and I am looking forward to seeing where we go.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Marshall in the middle.